Hey, what's going on, party people? It is Woodrow from 11 O'Clock Comics, of course. And as you can see, it is time to dive into the monthly catalogs and talk about some of the things that I am excited to pre-order. Now, you guys know, if you've been at this for a while, that I kind of switch it up. Some months I go page by page. Some months I just give you the highlights. Some months I give you a comprehensive look at just about everything I'm ordering, but skip the rest. We're going to go with the latter for this month. Also, instead of doing 3 or 4 different videos this month, I'm going to do 2. I'm going to have one video that will be the main previews catalog, and then this video that you're watching right now, which will cover both DC Connect and Marvel previews catalogs. Now, normally I would split those 2 up, but this is just one of those months where there's an absolute ton of stuff in the main catalog that I'm excited by and planning to order. Whereas with the big 2, it's just one of those transitional months where there's not a ton that I'm getting, particularly at DC, and there's a specific reason for that we'll get to shortly as we open up the pages. So without further ado, let's jump in to DC Connect, issue number 36 for May 2023. The majority of the books solicited in the catalog will be released in July of 2023 or later. As you can see here, there is an event coming up called Night Terrors, written by Joshua Williamson and more. And as we will see as you go through the catalog, it's one of those big transition periods for DC. What do I mean by that? Well, if you've been reading DC long enough, you know that at least for the era of Jim Lee being in charge, and maybe even going back to Dan DiDio, every few years they do somewhat of a reboot where they shuffle things up, relaunch titles, add new titles and the like. And it usually comes either right after or a few months after one of the big Crisis events. So we just had a Crisis event, and not surprisingly, we're getting another one of these shuffles. And so what DC does, which is different than Marvel, is they basically turn off the publishing spigot for a month or 2, and they give us a bunch of one-shots that are interrelated with a soft event. What I mean by soft event is they set up a circumstance, a status quo, and then they let most of the creative teams doing the regular DC books the chance to tell 1 or 2 month story that in some way touches the ethos that they're putting up. So in this case, we've got Night Terrors, which essentially there's a new villain, and that villain is putting everybody into a dream state that they can't get out of, and they are going to have to do battle with their worst fears while they try and figure out why it's happening, right? And that's really what we're coming down to. The villain's name is Insomnia, and we're just going to be deluged with lots and lots of books that are labeled Night Terrors, and then the name of the other book. So let's first start with what I am going to read, and that is Night Terrors First Blood number 1, which is a 48-page one-shot written by Joshua Williamson with art by Howard Porter. That is the effectively a setup issue, setting up the status quo. And then I will be checking out Night Terrors number 1 and 2 that are solicited here, and they are the first 2 issues of a 4-issue miniseries, also written by Joshua Williamson, but the miniseries has art by Giuseppe Camuncoli and Caspar Wingard, 2 artists who I enjoy very much. So I'm going to read all that stuff because A, I think Joshua Williamson is a good writer. B, he's clearly being positioned as the new big creator, the new head man at DC, at least for a time. So I want to see what he's got going for him. And yeah, it should be fun. Now, that said, the reason this is a very light month for me otherwise is because the vast majority of the books that I would normally be ordering, I am going to skip because they're being rebranded for this Night Terrors thing. And just to give you a flavor, as you would go through the catalog, we're not going to go through it page by page, but we've got Night Terrors Batman, Night Terrors Detective Comics, Night Terrors Nightwing, And you get the idea. We've got Poison Ivy, Catwoman, Harley Quinn, Joker, Robin, Superman, Action Comics, Flash, Wonder Woman, Titans, Shazam, Green Lantern, Black Adam, Angel Breaker, Zatanna, Punchline, Ravager. So all of those are Night Terrors, the characters I mentioned, number ones. And they're all, or at least I think the majority are number one of two. So for the next 2 months, DC's going to be doing this. My history with the other times they've done this has been that these issues are wide-ranging, from very good little mini stories to completely forgettable. But regardless of the quality of the issues themselves, you can be sure that most of them, what's happening is going to just be an aside and not really tie in to the narrative that the writers have been doing otherwise. And I understand why they're doing it, and there's nothing wrong with the plan for sure, but I do get irked when I see things like Night Terrors Green Lantern #1, or Night Terrors Titans #1, or Night Terrors Shazam #1, because we literally just got those books relaunched at #1s. I mean, they're each at like #1 or #2, and then they're not publishing them for 2 months to give us a new #1 and #2, and then they're going to go back and give us the second or third issue of the ongoing. It's just, it seems too cute by half, and so I'm going to be skipping them all. Certainly if people rave about a particular issue or two, and there's always a few that stand out, then maybe I'll check them out. So I'm not like ruling it out on any kind of, not for principle, it's just for me, there's better ways to allocate my time and ducats. So yeah, that's where I stand on this. But that said, let's continue on through the rest of the catalog quickly, and I think there are 5 or 6 other things that I wanted to call your attention to in DC. Hawk Girl #1, which is written by, I'm probably getting the name wrong, but I believe it's Jadzia Axelrod, with art by Aman K. Nemopan. I don't have a ton of history of reading Hawk Girl standalone comics, but certainly I like the character, and I am here for checking out the new direction. I'm also reading the majority of the Superman books right now. I know DAP is finally rubbing off on me after 15 years, so certainly The Adventures of Superman, John Kent #5, which is Tom Taylor and Clayton Henry, and Superboy, The Man of Tomorrow #4, which is Kenny Porter and Janoy Lindsay. I will be ordering excitedly. I highlighted a few months ago the trio of books that DC was launching to cater to characters from Asian origins, right? And I'm going to try the first issues of each. But I already had a chance to read Spirit World #1 by Alyssa Wong and Hai Ning as the artist, and liked it quite a bit. So I'm just calling your attention to #3 here. You'll notice if you look at the solicit text that John Constantine is guest starring in the book. So that's a little added nugget for you. Jumping ahead a bit, we've got Batman White Knight Presents Generation Joker #3. It is an exhaustingly long title. It's got 2 colons. Not a fan of any of that, but I am a fan of the source material and the book itself. I've really enjoyed pretty much everything in this Batman White Knight world that Sean Murphy has been doing with his creative partners for the better part of 7 or 8 years now. And this is the latest in a string of 6-issue miniseries. And like all of the series before this, they always have absolutely top-tier elite artists. And this time we've got Sean Murphy, Katana Collins, and Clay McCormick as the writers and story designers, with art by Mirka Andolfo. So anytime you're going to give me Mirka Andolfo drawing Bat characters, and Harley Quinn especially, I am in. So I touched briefly on the last episode of the podcast, Peacemaker Tries Hard #1, which is written by Kyle Starks with art by Steve Pugh. Kyle Starks is on an absolute tear right now. He's got a bunch of amazing books all coming out simultaneously. kudos to him. He is in the running for my writer of the year as a result. But this is pretty simple calculus here. If you enjoyed the John Cena starring Peacemaker show that James Gunn show ran, then you will enjoy this comic. It is a perfect comic adaptation of that character and that setup. If you didn't see that or you didn't care for it, then I would pass on this. Pretty easy stuff to figure out. And then last but not least, I've got two more books to point out, and that is Batman Superman, World's Finest, number 17. Continues to be written by Wade with amazing art by Dan Mora. And then last but certainly not least, Danger Street, number 7 of 12, Tom King and Jorge Fornes. So like I said, fairly light month for DC because of this 2-month standalone Night Terrors event while they get their next big push editorially in order. So I know for some of you, you'll just buy the issues. And I think, listen, the most logical thing to do would be if you're buying an ongoing already, maybe you just pick up these issues and treat them like 2 more issues of the ongoing. I'm not going to do that, but that's just my own personal decision. There's no right or wrong there, but that's how I'm approaching it. So there you have it, and I will be back momentarily to discuss Marvel. Okay, now let's talk about Marvel. It's a little bigger month at Marvel versus DC because they don't have a line-wide event that's mucking things up. But I still wouldn't call it a huge month for Marvel for me. But nevertheless, there's about a dozen, maybe dozen and a half things to go through quickly. As you can see, it's Moon Knight on the cover, giant size anniversary issue. Big fan of Jed MacKay, and not particularly big enough fan of Moon Knight to pick that up. But clearly Marvel's trying to make it a thing. The first thing I will be picking up is Ultimate Invasion, number 2 of 4. We discussed number 1 last month, so you won't be surprised to see this here. This is Hickman doing Marvel, and Brian Hitch, who, not a personal favorite per se, but certainly synonymous with modern Marvel event comics. They only have him do stuff when they think it is a big deal. So, I think this duo doing this book suggests that we're going to be seeing a lot more of the Ultimate Universe again in the future. We've got a new number 1 in Blade. I've always liked the character. He has spent the last few years as a member of Jason Aaron's Avengers, which I'm down for conceptually, but as many of you know, I didn't really connect with Jason's Avengers run, so I am looking forward to going back to a time when Blade is doing Blade things and focused on supernatural stuff, and that's what we've got here. So Brian Hill's writing it, but the big draw for me is Elena Casagrande on art. Elena was the primary artist. She did the majority of the issues of Kelly Thompson's Black Widow series, which I think is one of Marvel's sleeper hits of the last few years. It's one of the better books that I didn't think got enough public praise. And Casagrande's art was just absolutely stunning in that, and I think she's a perfect fit for this as well. So pretty stoked for this one. We've got Captain America number 750, and that is a special anniversary issue. As you can see, it is a 72-page issue, and you can also see that it's got a host of creators. You've got Colin Kelly, Jackson Lanzing, and Toki Onyebuchi, who are the main writers of the 2 Captain America books right now. You've also got J.M. DeMatteis, Gail Simone, Dan Jurgens, Stephanie Williams, Cody Ziegler as writers, and then Carmen Carnero, R.B. Silva, Dan Jurgens, Daniel Acuna, Rachel Stott, Marcus Williams, and Sarah Pacelli on art. So Marvel does a pretty good job, I think, in general on these oversized anniversary issues, and I've been a massive fan of the 2 Cap books under the stewardship of Kelly Lanzing and Onyebuchi, so I will be checking this out. Jumping over to the merry band of Marvel Mutants, the vast majority of things that I'm reading from Marvel these days would fall into this pocket. And first up, we've got X-Men Hellfire Gala X-Men Hellfire Gala 2023, number 1. written by X-Men writer Jerry Duggan, with art by Chris Anka, Joshua Cassara, Russell Dauterman, Andy Kubert, Pepe Larraz, R.B. Silva, Luciano Vecchio, and more. This has become an annual thing since the Hickman-Krakoa era started. Effectively, the X-Men throw a big gala. Lots of important people from around the Marvel Universe show up. Everybody's dressed to the nines, and then some kind of hijinks ensue. And the conceit is that it also serves as a time when Marvel announces the new X-Men lineup, the X-Men proper, where they let people vote for at least one of the members each year, and then they unveil the lineup in this issue typically. So that's probably what we're due to get. And then we've got X-Men number 24, also written by Jerry Duggan, with art by Joshua Cassara, who is just about my favorite X-artist working regularly these days. He has been at it for quite a while, and I just think he does great work. And as you can see, we've got Pog making an appearance. For those that remember, he was one of the Arakko members of the Ten of Swords Battle Royale, and it's cool to see him back for sure. We've got X-Men Before the Fall, Sinister Four, number 1. We've got a colon and a dash in this title. This is written by Kieran Gillen with art by Paco Medina. In a way, this looks and feels like, this is also a one-shot, this looks and feels like a end cap epilogue to Sins of Sinister. But we already got the end cap epilogue issue one-shot for Sins of Sinister. So I guess this is effectively we could view this as the 0 issue of the new Before the Fall event, which spins directly out of the things that happen in Sins of Sinister. Hopefully that's not too confusing, but either way, it's Kieran Gillen and Paco Medina, so it's going to be awesome. We've got X-Men Red, the last of the 3, what I would say most important X books, meaning the titular titles with the team concept, with Al Ewing continuing to make his mark and Jacopo Carmani on art. As you can see from the cover, if you're up on your Iraqi history, she's back, meaning Genesis, meaning the leader of the Arakko and Apocalypse's lover, and effectively the apocalypse of the Arakko. She's back, and I would assume that's probably not a great thing, but who knows? Then we've got Immortal X-Men. Kieran Gillen continues to make his mark here with Lucas Werneck on art. The Mark Brooks covers on these issues have been mind-blowingly beautiful throughout. As you can see, we've got Doug Ramsey, a.k.a. Cypher, and he is the voice of Krakoa, and it's time for Krakoa to speak. So what does Krakoa have to say to us? Let's find out. We've got Wolverine number 35, which is certainly meaningful because it's Vince B's favorite X book. He's always wanting to talk about it. It's written by Ben Percy and art by Juan Jose Rip. This is the Weapons of X conclusion, so effectively this is the end of the long-building battle between Wolverine and Beast. Now, I have said on the podcast, and I'll say it here, I think the quality of this book remains at an extremely high level. My personal enjoyment of it has waxed and waned because I adore Hank McCoy so much that I hate seeing him portrayed as a pure, unabashed villain. Now, let me be clear, I think this isn't like out of left field. They have been building towards this forever. It's a perfectly logical progression of his character. So I'm not like totally slamming this as a bad idea. But just personally speaking, I've spent the better part of 3 decades loving Hank McCoy as a hero. And so it's a little bit of a bitter pill to swallow. But I'm continuing to read it because I do love the characters involved. And it is well written and well drawn. 2 more X books. The Excellent, number 5 of 5, which is Peter Milligan and Michael Allred continuing their picking up from their run on X-Statix back in the 90s. They're back again. This is one of those books that's super niche. I doubt many of you watching this are planning on ordering this, and that's totally fine. But I loved X-Statix when it happened. I've enjoyed the times when they've revisited it for a couple of issues, and this is more of that. And then last but certainly not least, we've got X-Force number 42, also written by Ben Percy with art by Paul Davidson. And you've got a pretty cool cover here, if you ask me. It is Nimrod Beast. I don't know how that works, but it's basically a beast version of Nimrod, choking out my girl Domino and a half-torn-apart Deadpool standing on a heap of other X-Men members or X-Force members. So, very interested to see where this goes. And if you'll notice, it might be hard to see on this video, but if you zoom in, there's a variant cover by James Stokoe. Now, I am not usually one for variant covers. I pay very little attention to them, but I adore James Stokoe. So the idea of him doing a series of variant covers for a mutant book is something I need to strongly consider ordering instead of the main cover. Now we get to my happy place outside of the mutant universe, and that is the Avengers. We're now at issue number 3 of the new dawn of the Jed MacKay era with C.F. Villa on art. I am overjoyed at the logo that we see here, the old school Avengers logo from the late 80s and early 90s, which is so synonymous with when I was first coming up into the fanatic level of comic reading, and I love to see it. We've got Guardians of the Galaxy number 4, Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing, and Kev Walker off to a smashing start after reading the first issue. It is Guardians in the Wild West, and Man Oh Man is that an amalgamation of two things that I have historically loved. So this is chocolate and peanut butter making a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. Doctor Strange, another Jed MacKay book with Pascal Ferry. If you have been staying current with our podcast, you know that both David and I quite enjoyed the 10-issue run we got with Clea as the stand-in for the Sorcerer Supreme. And this is really just a continuation of that same series, in my opinion, just retitled because Stephen Strange is now back among the living and is the Sorcerer Supreme again. But it's really just a continuation of that. So I consider this like issue 15 of that run, and I'm still enjoying it. Clobberin' Time, number 5 of 5. This is one of those sleeper books. I talked on the Slack and the podcast about the first issue and what an awesome surprise it was. One of those books where it really is an indie book written and drawn by Steve Skroce, who does amazing work, very much outside of the normal mainstream, both visually and in terms of his sense of humor. But this is his homage to Marvel Team Up, and I'm here for it. The first issue was terrific, and this is the 5th and final issue. And then last but certainly not least, we've got some collected editions. As we joke, Marvel generally solicits 7 or 8 different Omniboo each month now. I have no earthly idea who would buy them all and even how many stores would carry them all. I doubt many LCS carry all of them. But this time I will say that there are 3 with that I'm seriously considering. First, as you see here, we've got Blade, The Early Years. Now, I say considering because this does collect a lot of stuff in omnibus form that I already have collected in other omnibus. This is, as you might expect, since it's called Blade the Early Years, a lot of it is from early issues of Tomb of Dracula. And then we've got some Doctor Strange stuff, and then and then like Vampire Tales and some Marvel Comics Presents. But the majority of it is from different parts of Tomb of Dracula, and I, like many of you, already own the Tomb of Dracula omnibus. So I'm going to have to really kind of look at what's in those Tomb of Dracula omnibus and just line up what's here and decide if the stuff they're putting in here is worth the additional purchase of repeat stuff from Tomb of Dracula. I'm not sure. I'm leaning towards yes, which is why it's in the video, but I haven't fully committed to this one yet. One I am absolutely committed to, and you all should be too, is the Marvel Universe by Arthur Adams omnibus. We all adore Arthur Adams, and he's one of those creators who really hasn't done as many comic books as you think he has. Because the ones he has done have been so emblazoned in our psyche, in our memory, that we can always pull them out as soon as his name comes up. But in truth, he hasn't drawn the interiors of many, many Marvel books over the years. It'd surprise you. But this omnibus gives us all of it. Or I shouldn't say gives us all of it, because I'm not exactly sure that's true, because I didn't vet it. But it gives us a lot of what you would hope to see. It's got Longshot in there, 1 through 6, the New Mutant Special Edition, the X-Men Annuals, your Cloak and Dagger issue, your X-Factor issues, Mojo Mayhem, the Excalibur one-shot Prestige. It's got the FF 3 issues that he did with the team up. It's got Web of Spider-Man Annual, X-Men Annual number 12, FF number 358, and the Marvel Holiday Special from 1991. So, like I said, this is a fairly comprehensive sampling of the work that Arthur did for Marvel, at least in terms of interior work. So I'm just stoked for this. I'm going to treat this like an art book, and the stories are the stories, but man, oh man, to have all of this in one collection and easily referenced is just phenomenal. And then last but not least is The Incredible Hulk Omnibus Volume 2 with a Herb Trimpe cover. You can also get the Stranko cover if you're ordering from a direct market outlet, but you've got Incredible Hulk, the original series, number 103 to 134, and the first annual. So just good, solid archival stuff that I'm happy to add to the bookcase. And that will do it for the House of Ideas. So there you have it. We've got roughly 25-ish Marvel and DC things that I've called your attention to. So plenty to chew on. And, it's probably fair to say that collectively it's one of the lightest months we've had in a long time for the big two. But it's cyclical. And once DC gets past this 2-month Night Terrors thing, I'll be back to buying and reading a lot of those issues. So it'll feel more normal then. But expect it to be a fairly truncated month next month as well because of the same situation. But we'll still do a video and still walk you through the other things that I'm vibing with. So thank you for watching or listening, depending on how you chose to consume this. And please be sure to check out the Patreon, patreon.com/11o'clockcomics if you aren't already involved. And if the Patreon's not your vibe, you can always check us out on the Facebook group. Just go to Facebook and search for 11 O'Clock Comics. That's 11 O'Clock Comics. And you'll see a group. And if you're not already a member, you can request it. And we will, if we don't think you're a bot, we will happily bring you aboard for great conversation in a positive environment that's well moderated. And we just talk about life, the universe, and everything, mainly comics, but in a very constructive place. So it's a nice little haven in a sea of otherwise toxic internet. So there you have it. That's it for this month. As I said, there's a companion video either already posted or coming soon where I look through the main previews catalog, and that is quite a bit longer of a list. It's one of those massive months from my perspective, and I will take you through it all. I think I've got either close to or slightly more than 40 different books that I'm highlighting in that video. So check that one out too, and thanks again for your time and attention.